crawled up Silas's face as he said the words, and he cleared his throat before adding, "You know, like a date." She blinked. She'd been expecting him to ask her to cover bus duty this week or something. Silas had been most decidedly in the friend category in her mind, not because he wasn't dateable, but because he hadn't shown the least interest in her up until now. She sipped her coffee again, mostly because she was figuring out what to say. "I don't think that would be a good idea," she finally said. She saw him blushing harder and instantly felt guilty. "I mean, I would, but with my grandmother and everything." She trailed off, hoping he'd get the hint. Luckily, he did. "No, I get it, but think about it, okay? You don't have to say yes or no right now." He handed her the last of her copies. "See you later, Kat." Despite her best efforts, Kat couldn't help but think about another man as she walked to her class. A man she wished would ask her out. Gavin Danvers, who'd avoided her since he'd been so awkward at the farm-to-table festival earlier in the spring. Not only had Gavin fallen on top of her to keep a ball from hitting her, but he'd looked at her lips for an intensely long moment, like he'd wanted to kiss her. Until he'd sprung up like he'd been scalded and had subsequently avoided her. Considering Herons Landing was ridiculously tiny, avoiding a particular person took a lot of effort. And Kat had definitely noticed Gavin's effort in this regard. Gavin was the black sheep of the Danvers family. While his brother Adam Danvers ran the family vineyard, Gavin had moved away with his wife and daughter years ago. But now Gavin was back, newly divorced, his young daughter with him. Kat wondered if Gavin had ever asked a woman out for drinks, or if he just smoldered in their general direction and they came running. Then again, he'd been married at a young age. He might not have a lot of dating experience. By the time it was time for Kat to teach an hour later, she'd gotten her brain in order, as well as her lesson plans. Kat had been able to stop thinking about Gavin Danvers, until Kat saw his young daughter Emma was one of the kids in her class. Of course she is, Kat thought to herself. Considering that the elementary school in Herons Landing had all of one class per grade, it was pretty much guaranteed that Kat would be teaching Emma Danvers at some point today or tomorrow. Today, Emma had her hair in lopsided braids, wearing purple leggings under an orange dress. At 8, the girl picked out her own clothes, but their lack of coordination, as well as the hair that was messy and probably completely tangled, bespoke a father who was distracted, to say the least. Kat rather wished she could come to their place and braid the girl's hair herself. Emma didn't look much like her father, but sometimes her mannerisms would mirror his. She tended to narrow her eyes like Gavin would when annoyed. Both father and daughter also preferred to observe first and speak later. Kat had a feeling that Emma's was more due to shyness, whereas her father's was more because he found small talk annoying. Emma said no more than 5 words the entire class, never raising her hand when Kat asked a question. Kat never cold-called on students. Humiliation never worked as a learning tool, but she tried to get as many of her students involved as possible. It was too easy for some to disappear in the crowd, though. Kat knew she needed to find a way to get the shyer students to interact along with the more extroverted ones. While the kids did work on their own, Kat stopped by each student to encourage them or correct their finger placement on the keyboard. When Kat got to Emma, she watched as the girl typed the sentence on the screen perfectly and as quickly as any adult. "Where did you learn to type like that?" said Kat, impressed. Emma jumped, her fingers smashing into the keyboard. Her eyes were wide as she looked up at Kat. Kat touched Emma's shoulder. Sorry, I didn't mean to sneak up on you like that." Where most kids would shrug or laugh, Emma just shook her head and seemed to turn further into herself. She tipped her chin down and said in a low voice, "My mom?" Kat squatted down next to Emma.